Right, good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, thank you to Vito. I think it's a fantastic day we've had so far. And I must say, this is probably the best venue that I've ever given for a conference. It's absolutely spectacular. It's my pleasure to talk around this topic, issues of quality. And quite interesting, some of the comments previously that have been said around low cost equals low quality. I'd like to challenge that assumption. And also ask maybe questions later as to what evidence people have to support that assumption, that low cost equals low quality. But also a range of issues like timeliness, efficiency, and innovation. So, our data. The heart of every registry is the information it holds. I strongly believe the only reason a register exists is so people can access data. And our role must be to ensure that more people access the data, use that data day to day, and make decisions that improve the economy. So I want to take some of these topics in turn, and I'll start with quality and timeliness. And I've linked the two together because actually to me it cuts at the heart of what I call integrity of the register. And one of the things we haven't necessarily talked about so far is what you define as quality. And for me, there are a number of things. I think importantly for any registry is the one at the bottom around quality of service to our customers, whether it be those that are filing information or those that are accessing data. But in terms of quality and integrity of the register, I talk about three things. Is the information complete? Is it current? And is it correct? And I think, to be honest, from a UK perspective, we've done an awful lot around saying, is the information complete? Whole stack of checks to ensure that it meets the requirement of the law, both UK and European law. We do an awful lot of work to ensure the information is current. You know, we have compliant rates for our accounts and annual returns well over 99%. And I will challenge others to say, can you better that? You may be, please let me know, because I want to know what you're doing to get better than that. So an awful lot of work around making it current and ensuring also that actually we take a very strong line in terms of enforcement. We prosecute over 2,000 directors every year to ensure that actually they file their requirements. I think the area where there's been most question around the UK registry has been, is the information correct? And yes, the model that we have is one of low burden. Get the information in, make it available, and we do not check the absolute accuracy of the information that we hold. Now, does that make that lower quality? I actually believe that the vast majority of companies and directors give you good information. The minority are the ones that maybe give you bad, and it's how you deal with that. And certainly one of the things that we do is work very closely with other colleagues in other parts of government who actually have a lot of powers to investigate companies that actually aren't doing what they should do, whether it be Insolvency Service, the Tax Authority, the police through the Home Office, the National Crime Agency, the National Fraud Authority, and actually dealing with issues as and when they arise and correcting them. So the issue about correctness is at the heart of integrity. We're doing a lot more work than we've ever done before and trying to create this balance between ease of doing business and integrity of the information. So quality and timeliness, absolutely key to any register. Moving on, availability. And within this, I talk about open data. Now, for me, I know we've had a few definitions. For me, open data, it's around being accessible and being free. For it to be truly open data, it must be available to be used and it should be free. I know other people will disagree about that, but that's my definition. And in terms of the UK register, how do we make information available? Well, in a huge range of ways, whether it be on the personal side in terms of individuals accessing our web services, and we've had over 240 million requests for data last year. Right? Our app has achieved over 100,000 downloads. Our URI service, which creates a unique web link for every single company, has now topped in total since its launch in 2011, October, over 260 million requests for data through that service. That's people just pulling automatically for free the basic information about a company. As you can see, the vast majority of what we do is free data. Small proportion, typically when people want a copy, a PDF copy of accounts or returns, we charge for it. But that will be changing, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But in addition, a whole host of bulk information, whether through API services and XML gateways or bulk downloads, available to a vast range of companies, many of which you'll know, both in the public sector and the private sector. The register's role is to be available. It's at the heart of what we do. And open data, as I said, accessible and free, and through a range of services, whether it be the URI service, our mobile app, If you haven't got it, please download it. It's a Google Store or Apple Store near you. But the XML gateway, also our bulk products and bulk services. And why do I want open data? Well, there's a mass of it. Sorry, I should say that actually from the UK perspective, we're looking to try and make all our data in whatever format, both bulk and individual, available free by 2015. There's still a number of hurdles we want to get through to get there, but we believe that's the heart of what the registry is about. It might be controversial. I know different people have different views, and I'm sure some of those represented on the panel here. But I think one of the amazing things that I've noticed from today is that every single session has been talking about open data. 2 or 3 years ago, none of them would have been. Right? So what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years? This move in open data, whether it be for registries, whether it be for government, is really just ramping up and really taking over. And it's one thing, actually, as registries, whatever our position, whether the business model is to charge for some, make some free, it's an issue we have to engage with in debate and really get different views on. But what are some of the advantages I've seen so far? Well, where we have made data available, unsurprisingly, we've seen a huge increase in use. The director's information we made available for free 18 months ago, the usage has gone up in some circumstances by 500%, and that's without any marketing or communication. We've put no money into doing that. That was just organic growth from users. We've seen new uses. We've actually seen new businesses in the UK set up. I don't know whether Chris may say more of this later, but open corporates and a few others that we have in the UK weren't around 5 years ago in the same way they are now. We are seeing new uses and new companies set up on the back of open data. They are creating economic benefit. They're creating new businesses, and in the past, the fees that have been charged have been a barrier to entry to new companies. So when we talk about innovation later, open data is a real stimulus for innovation. It also increases corporate transparency. The more people looking at data, the more people question it, the more they might see some of the issues that are with the data, and I believe that the philosophy of many eyes looking at data actually increases quality. Any registry is limited in the amount of checking that it can do. The more people that look at the data, the more information, the more feedback you get. And certainly the challenge for us in the UK is to make sure those routes to get that information back in are really quick and easy, and we act on them. So I'm a big supporter of open data, and I think it's certainly something that the UK registry is looking to embrace.
Before you move on, this concept of distributed control through, many eyes going through the data, I think is very relevant back to the question of how much quality is desirable, whether quality is centrally defined or is a learning process by distributed involvement of many people, peer-to-peer chat.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's an interesting one and a good debate, which I'm sure we'll continue to have. I just want to give you one example. Last November, we launched a free accounts product. On the back of the work we're doing on iXBRL, which we talked about earlier, we have a massive filings in iXBRL. We have over 2 million of them. And we made them all available for free last November as iXBRL data. Put it out there because we weren't quite sure what people were going to do with this data. And one example we've got, a company called Core Filing. They're not a business information company. They're actually a company that leads a lot in iXBRL technology. They now have on their website access to all the Companies House data on iXBRL accounts. You can go on there, look at the 2 million sets of accounts. You can actually now filter by requirements. So if you want to know how many companies in the UK have more than £50,000 in the bank, you can go on there, set the filter for 50,000, and it will show you the companies, and you can then access each one of their accounts. That would never have happened if we charged for it. Previously, we used to have maybe 30 customers for our bulk accounts product. We've had over 20,000 downloads for that product since November.
Okay, but wait till tomorrow. Mario Draghi will give a free amount of cash to every company in Europe, so we don't have this problem. Okay?
So, open data, new uses. I believe that will mean that the UK will have one of the most transparent financial information in the world. We have over 2 million sets of accounts a year, the vast majority of them now in iXBRL, and will be available free of charge. Moving on. Right, efficiency. Very quickly, again, on the back of the move to digital, we've seen huge changes in the register. The register is growing rapidly. We incorporated 530,000 new companies last year. We topped 3.3 million, and the vast majority of those things are now done digitally. We had 9 million transactions. And what we've seen over the last few years, the number of employees has gone down dramatically. We were over 1,300 We're now down at just under 900. We anticipate we'll be closer to 600 in 3 or 4 years' time. The costs, and we have a measure of what does it cost to keep a company on the register, again, has come down significantly. It was over £24. It's now down to less than 16, and will go to less than £10 per company on the register over the next few years. The advantage of that, we replayed back to our customers in terms of fees. Incorporation fee is £15, annual return fee is £13, and as I said, a vast majority of information is now available for free. So benefits to the economy in terms of low cost and free information. Think about innovation, vitally important, huge things that have gone on. One of the things that I said that is central to what we're doing is the first one, which we talk about, is a new development, which is developing a brand new API. Instead of having separate filing and search systems, essentially we have a central database and we will have an API. The API, you have certain calls on the API when you're filing, certain when you're searching. And so we will have a single API through which anybody can access the data, whether it be our web customers or third parties. Mobile app, continually developing. As I said, 100,000 downloads. A lot of work in the UK around a central government portal for all things for citizens and business. Our website will be moving on to there by the end of this year. And again, just leading the way in terms of government services. And just making it really simple for both people to file and access data. I know many of you have got similar things, but a simple company profile with the basic information easily available and continually developing it. Another thing we're doing, it was interesting, the tell us once principle and file once. This is work we're doing with the tax authority. We've had a service for a couple of years, we're now updating it, which allows people to enter the data once and file both to the tax authority and to the company's house, even when there are different requirements. So they enter the data once, and the system will automatically work out the abbreviated accounts for company's house and the full accounts for HMRC. But also innovation, we believe, is also about how our users use the system. We do a lot of work on usability testing. This is a heat map where we've had lots of users of differing ability test our systems before they go live. And as you can see, the red dot means that's where someone was spending an awful lot of time looking at it because they didn't know what they could do. And we managed to solve that problem and fix it before it went live. So innovation in terms of how you design your systems, using agile methodology, as well as innovation in terms of the products themselves. And finally, sustainability. I think the big challenge for all of us is actually who as a company is changing. Everything from the London taxi driver right up to the major PLC. We have dormant companies. We have companies set up for a project. We have companies that are set up just to do specific things, right? And also huge networks of companies that are set up that operate right the way across the world. So who as a company is dramatically changing, and that's a big challenge for us is in the sustainability of registers. But I think the key thing for us, for any register, is how we balance things. It's the need for integrity and quality of data, balanced with the ease of doing business to ensure there is really good transparency of companies. And for me, and apologies to Chris, I've nicked a couple of your words from somebody a while back, but I believe the future has to be fully digital. It's all about making sure the information is current and true. It's open, but I think increasingly in a global world that it's connected. And that comes to open standards and open ways of looking at them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Great job. Chris, do you want to be second after Tim, just for consistency?
I don't mind.
Yeah, please. Posso chiedervi di mettere la presentazione di Chris Taggart, prego? Grazie. Just to keep the continuity of British logic, okay? Yes. You remember John Locke? United Kingdom is the best of possible world.
Well, I was a mathematician, so I don't really understand the idea of British logic. I think that maths is universal. So I'd like to talk a bit about what we're doing, and first of all, thank you, Vito, for inviting me here. I'm extremely pleased to be here, a little bit surprised, and it feels a little bit like being in the lion's den sometimes. But anyway, here goes. As Tim explained, the world we live in, from a company point of view, it's very different. From the technology point of view as well, it's very different. It's massively complex and massively interconnected now, and nowhere more so than in companies. Companies used to be physical, bricks and mortar, a place that you'd go and visit. That's not true. It's not even a multinational headquarters. It's much more like this. Hundreds, thousands of companies, thousands of legal entities in multiple different jurisdictions. Or like this, quite complex networks. This is actually a much simplified network of a public New Zealand corporation. And actually the complexity and the scale and all this is growing by the day. The scale is growing. We no longer see tens of companies making up a corporate structure, but hundreds, thousands, soon even tens of thousands. The speed of company formation is growing. The numbers that are formed per day, per year, but also how quickly they're formed and die as well. We're starting to see the beginnings of high-frequency company formation. The opacity is growing. As the networks become more complex, the use of secrecy jurisdictions is growing and actually threatens many of the established company registers who become, in some sense, neutered by having much of the activity happen offshore in opaque jurisdictions. And the complexity is growing. When you look at corporate networks, when you look at corporate structures, what you do not have in general is a hierarchy, a tree, but you actually have what are called cyclical graphs. Sometimes even circular ones, where A owns B, owns C, and C owns part of A. And it's a real problem, this, because if we can't understand it, we can't control it. We have systematic problems in the financial world, in terms of exporting, jobs, market failures. We have lack of competition in many areas. We have many examples of lack of corporate accountability. And corporate governance. So one of the things is if you can't understand this company, then there are no incentives for it to act like a good corporate citizen, to pay tax in the home country to where it does business. When you can't understand the company, how can you compete with it? So Google, for example, lists only in its SEC filings, lists 2 subsidiaries in the world. How do you compete with Google if you don't understand what Google is? And of course, it's a problem from a crime point of view, from money laundering, from corruption. And we have to remember that why we have companies in the first place. We have companies for the good of society, because we believe that by having these legal entities that have a different personality, a separate, distinct legal personality from the owners, from the directors, that we will have a more prosperous, a better society because of it. But the reason we have them is for the good of society. And actually, we've talked a lot today about open, about data, but we haven't really been quite clear what we mean. But what we mean by data is machine readable. Getting the numbers, getting the information in a way that we can process it automatically is absolutely critical. In the 21st century, where we all have smartphones, where all websites of any size are driven by data, it is critical that we get this as data. And actually, there's a huge asymmetry of access to the public data. What is actually happening when the data is sold to someone like Dun & Bradstreet? What you're doing what is happening by selling the data is you're deciding who gets that data, who gets this as information, who gets this as a machine-readable form. You're saying, actually, you, Dun & Bradstreet, you can have this as data in a way that can be processed, but you, some NGO, transparency NGO over there, you can't. Some journalist over there, you can't. Some innovator over there who doesn't have your established business model, you can't. So it should be no surprise when someone like Dun & Bradstreet takes this statutory company data that you've all worked hard to get in a good quality form and obfuscates it, doesn't say where they get it from, adds their own identifiers, which are proprietary and which actually don't map well to legal entities, and then sell it for a huge markup. This is what the system of selling the data does. It encourages this rent-seeking behavior. And actually, it's no surprise in the earlier session that one of the company from Italy said, we want to pay for the data, because paying for the data is a barrier to entry to others. And in a when we have a free market, particularly in creating a good business environment, we do not want barriers to entry. This is bad for society and bad for business. Just on the aspect of criminal behavior, the World Bank did a report about a year and a half ago. They found that out of 150 large-scale corruption cases, the majority use companies. Companies, are routinely used for money laundering, for fraud, for organized crime, for drug cartels. This is what is being. This is the system that we have now. And going back to first principles, this chap here, he was the person that introduced the 1844 Company Act, which was the first of the main company acts in the UK, which introduced companies' registration en masse. And he said one of the critical things is that everyone should know who he's doing business with, so he knows what grounds he's dealing with. And it's absolutely critical. I've been in the private sector my entire life. You do business with other companies. You need to know who is behind those companies, who you're really doing business with. Are they solvent? And actually, as an SME, we don't have access to those services. When we talk about the burdens of business, actually one of the ways you can increase the burdens on SMEs is to make this information expensive and hard to get. And this is one of the reasons why the G8 have now agreed that open data should be at the core of their innovation. They talk about open data being an untapped resource, and they specifically talk about it being open data by default. Now, Italy, Germany, and France have all agreed, this open data charter, have all agreed that it should be open data by default, have all agreed it should be open data, usable by all, for increased governance and for innovation too. And what we're doing, like with GPS, what open data does is it removes the barriers. It stops people coming up with good ideas and trying things out. If GPS had charged a cent per request, we wouldn't have the GPS system we have today with it all on our phones. And what they actually mean by the G8 means, and what the World Bank means, what the IMF means, what all of these organizations mean by open data is very clear. It's this definition here. It's open if it's subject at most to the requirements to attribute and share alike. It's free to access and free to get, and free in cost and free in license as well. So we did an index that we do with the World Bank, the Open Company Corporate Data Index, and looking at whether you can get data as open data from different companies, whether you can get information and also whether you can get it as data. And actually, this is starting to look much better. The UK has been leading this, but closely followed by Norway and Denmark. Latvia recently, in the last week or so, opened up data. Belgium has been doing some. So you can see that there's been some significant improvement, actually, from when we started this about a year ago. But actually, there's still many places where you can't even do in Europe, where you can't even do a search to see if a company exists without paying money. Now, we think this is incredibly bad for the business environment and bad for innovation and bad for society too. And in fact, Europe actually scores on average, I think, just over 27 out of 100. China scores 29 out of 100. That should make everyone here think. So, you know about this, the role of company registers. I mean, the primary role is as a register. You have this as a register. If the register isn't used, then why have it in the first place? The people who benefit from being registered are those, like my company, who register as a company. And often there have been many attempts to bypass registers, to try to marginalize them, as were Dun & Bradstreet or many other identifiers. But we think they still matter. We think, in fact, they are critical to good business. That's why I am on the board of directors of the Globally Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, and I was argued strongly that the business register information should be included as part of the core data for the LEI. So quickly, just run through what we're doing. And actually, it's worth saying that what we're doing fundamentally is making business information for free for everybody. Now, that shouldn't be contentious in a world of public registers, but it is. And that's why I'm so grateful to be speaking here. We have a simple goal: an open database, an openly licensed database with an entry for every single legal entity in the world. We started about 3 years ago. We've got over 60 million. In fact, it's just hit 70 million companies in about 85 different jurisdictions. It's searchable across multiple jurisdictions, freely, without charge, without registration. You can also search for directors and officers across multiple jurisdictions as well. But more than that, it's also linkable too. By having this in one place, you can link and you can do useful things with it. For example, we automatically link branch companies to their home companies. We do that automatically without having to set up a new system, without having to do anything special. It just happens in the system. And that's incredibly useful for finding out for finding information about other directors, for finding other information that other jurisdictions require, and for finding out if the company is still in business. We link other data to companies, for example, trademark data, financial license. We expect by the end of the year to have every single banking license in the world in open corporates. We're linking corporate networks. We think we've got one of the best network data for the US banks. This is Goldman Sachs. We mapped this on. We mapped all of the networks. You can see how all these companies are linked. They go up to 12, even 15 chains in the link. There's the United States, as you can see. There's the UK. Luxembourg, you might see, is quite important, in Ireland. And this big one below the United States is the Cayman Islands. And finally,
It's very surprising, honestly. Why do you pick Goldman Sachs just for chance? Okay.
We picked Goldman Sachs because actually it's one of the. So we actually, if you go to that part of the website, you have the top 5 US banks in there. It's interesting because they're much bigger in their use of the Cayman Islands than the others. Really,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but the others would also be interesting. But what we do is we link back to registers. We always say where we got the information from and when we got it from. If we don't obfuscate that, we don't say here it is, just trust us. We say we got it from this on this date from this place. And if there is a permanent URL for that company, we will link back to that. Because we think that the company registers are the canonical source. They are the source of record. And finally, we are open. And open is really important to us. We're open because we actually think it's better than, for society. And even though we're a for-profit company, we have strong beliefs about our role in making a better society. It's better for innovation. It's better for competition. It's better for efficiency. It's a really easy way of sharing, particularly cross-border and cross-organization. And it's great that the European Commission is now starting, finally, to understand the role of open data in this space. But the other thing is that we have a lot of people using open corporates. Banks use it for onboarding. We have corporate investigators use it. We have governments use it. And one of the things is actually we think that one of the reasons people are interested in it is because of the quality aspects. We think open actually, as Tim mentioned, open has significant benefits for quality. These are the typical problems of proprietary data. There are problems with accuracy because it's being rekeyed. There are very few eyeballs looking at this. So we get probably somewhere in the region of about 10 emails a day, people telling us the data is wrong. And almost always it is wrong. Over 90% of the time, it is wrong on the original source document. Some director hasn't been, they haven't updated their director record or the registered address, or there's some error in data entry. There's gaps in data, of course. It's only a question of where you can have a business around this. The granularity is very poor in terms of exactly what they mean, what the data is, what it's exactly saying. It's very poor. There's no feedback mechanism, and critically, the two ones that are most important to us. One is that this is black box data. With the proprietary data, it's black box data. They don't tell you where you got it from and when they got it. And this is not just important from a point of view. I used to be a journalist, and I want to know before I go to print where this information came from. But it's also important from a context point of view. If you're combining this data set and this data set, in order to be able to do it intelligently, you need to know where it came from. And in the business world, that is increasingly important. And finally, it is isolated. It is not part of this linking structure that goes to making this together. There are two really critical ways of improving data quality. One is to have as many people looking at it as possible. as many people, particularly in a different context than if it was collected. You don't want necessarily the people who are submitting it, you want the people who are competing with those submitted it to be looking at it. And the second way is to combine it with another data set. Combine it particularly with another data set collected in a different way, at a different time, by a different mechanism. And that's what open data allows you to do. So we think that open data is the future of business information. Actually, going back to what Robert Lowe said, this is about knowing who you're doing business with. There is no societal benefit or business benefit to restricting access to this. And anybody that says there is, ask them what they're, to justify it from a societal benefit. You could have a register that nobody had the data to, and all the costs would be there. The cost of making the data available after you've done that are almost insignificant. All of the costs really are about collecting the data. So think about this. Think about adding value. Think about not rent-seeking. Think about the provenance, and think about why open data can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Really remarkable. Great job. I'll come back to you. I don't think you're done already. Johannes? I'll keep Rico for last because we keep on talking again about openness. Yeah. The European equilibrium against the Anglo-Saxon.
We're still part of Europe.
Really? You must be kidding. Come on. Johannes, you have the floor. We move from, gentlemen, please appreciate, we move from Chris, Open Corporates, to Johannes, German Federal Chamber of Notaries. Okay?
Yes, thank you. Dear Vito, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speaking today to you. My name is Johannes Hushahn. I'm a German notary candidate, a civil law notary candidate, and also the Deputy Director of the German Federal Chamber of Notaries at the moment. I would like to talk a few minutes about the role of the notary in Germany and the role he plays, especially for the data quality, without it impeding to involve a notary that the registration process is efficient. How important data quality is was already pointed out this morning by Mr. Arzeni, also by Professor Riccardi, and earlier on this afternoon by Russell Perry, taking into account the importance of data quality for the reliability for transactions, as well as the fighting against money laundering and white-collar crime. I would like to give you a short overview how German civil notaries provide data quality in order to achieving these goals, combined with an efficient registration process in collaboration with the commercial registers in Germany. In order to do this, I'm planning to give you a short reminder of what German civil notaries actually are, what the role is, also how commercial registers work in Germany, and then the main part of my presentation will consist of the role the notary actually plays in the registration process. Yeah, German notaries are highly qualified legal professionals. We are at the same level as judges and lawyers. We are holders of an independent public office, which means that we are appointed by the state and we are subject to government supervision. That in turn means that we cannot negotiate our fees and we are obliged to accept every single request of notarization, may it be economically good for us or not. We have competences not only in company law, but also in the inheritance estate legal field, as well as family law and, of course, real estate. But especially, and that's why I'm here and allowed to talk to you, we are the filter for the commercial registers in Germany. That means that every application to the commercial register in Germany has to go through the notary first. So commercial registers in Germany, they are public registers kept by the local courts in the 16 states. That's something different to the company register that Michael Hacker was referring to before this afternoon. The entry is obligatory for nearly all forms of companies under German law, and it provides access to all relevant information concerning commercial enterprises, especially not only, well, its name, but most important, the authorized representatives, also shareholders in certain cases, and the share capital. The most important point which I would like to point out is that the German commercial register enjoys public trust. We call it a positive public trust and a negative public trust, meaning that you can rely on the registered information, whether it actually is accurate or not, and you can also rely on the absence of facts that are not registered in the public register. That is beneficial for all transactions with companies and their shares, of course, as well. And by that we, in collaboration with the commercial courts, can create a public good that, of course, requires a high standard of data quality, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to rely on it in such a widespread way. This high standard of data quality does not impede the efficient process of registration at all, because all applications to the commercial register have to be done electronically. The notary plays a key role in this by digitizing his deeds, digitizing the application, and that's probably the most important part, structuring the data in the XML format and submit it subsequently to the courts. How important structured data is was pointed out by Russell Perry before this afternoon as well. I will come to the main part of my presentation, that's the role in the registration process of the notary. The notary collects the required information and documents as well, mostly also preparing them for the parties, making the necessary data thereby available. He evaluates their content, the completeness, the accuracy, the validity, and gives impartial and independent legal advice where required. That probably is the key part of securing the data quality there. And then, as pointed out before, he prepares the data for the commercial register by digitizing the documents, certifying the accuracy of the electronic version, and then by filtering and structuring the information relevant for the entry into the register. That in turn is the part which I would call data efficiency and as well innovation. A collaboration also always needs a second partner. The second partner in Germany for the notaries are, of course, the different commercial registers. The commercial register can rely on the information, which was already verified by the notary. It rechecks the information nonetheless, but it can do so, of course, much more quickly than if it would have to check the information at first hand. Still, the second set of eyes is very important if you want to secure data quality. And then it incorporates all the electronic documents and the structured data into the register in a process of a few clicks. And yeah, usually if the notary has done his work well without any change to the data at all, that guarantees that the data is brought into the register quickly and timely as well. The key issue of this whole process is, as you might have realized already now, the data quality, and we believe that the notaries do play a major part in providing the data quality. The access, the registration access, I should say, not the access by getting the information, only goes through the notary, and more important, the notary identifies the applicants face to face, especially the directors, but also partners and partnerships, and he drafts and hands in shareholder lists there as well. Essentially, the notary guarantees but that the complete, accurate, and valid content of the registered data and fulfills thereby his filter function. Let me come to the end of my presentation by reading out loud what I've written down here, because that is, I think, the core of the presentation, the data quality. The German notaries, the German system of commercial law and its socio-economic benefits are based on transparency and public trust and the content of the commercial registers. The principle of public trust, in turn, is only viable if the information in the register can be relied on as legally and also factually accurate, complete and current. And the German civil law notary, in collaboration with the commercial registers, guarantees this required data quality. Still, that doesn't mean that the process is inefficient. Entry into the commercial register nowadays is not a major bureaucratic process, but cost and time efficient and modern service rendered both by notaries and the court. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I don't know how to define your speech, like a truly notary speech. Thank you. Let's have the Netherlands equilibrium point between centralized control, total openness, and a different business model. Rico Dunn is manager of the Camera of Koophandel from the Netherlands. Please, Rico.
So, the last speaker of the day, that's always a lovely position, being between you and the first drink of the evening. So I'll try to keep it a bit short, I suppose. First of all, thanks to Vito, Valerio, and the other guys from Infocamere, and of course the Roman Chamber, for the possibility to speak here. We always think there are lots of similarities between the Netherlands system and the Italian system, but we don't have buildings like this. I mean, this is amazing to be here, of course.
You don't even have the land, Rico. You don't have the land.
No, I don't know. But to come to the presentation for today, I will focus on the quality aspects of the Dutch register, because we're in this section, so that sounded logical to me, despite the fact that I really very much think that the most important thing of any business register is the output, because we don't register just to register, we register to give everybody the possibility to use the information. But anyway, today I will focus a bit more on the quality, thus on the input aspect. First of all, a few words on the Chamber of Commerce in the Netherlands and some major changes we've had during the last year and a half. And I'm not quite sure if I'm allowed to say all this here with the Italian chambers around, because there might be some changes here as well. But anyway, this has happened to us. First of all, a little over a year ago, the annual fee which companies and businesses had to pay to be on the business register has been abolished. The policy rationale behind it was, you could say, twofold. First of all, the idea was that there were always many questions and complaints about paying for being on the register. And the second one was a political change in some tax measures, and the government thought it would be a good idea to abolish this annual fee, which would give back something like 150, 160 million euros to companies in general, which of course nobody notices, but from a policy aspect and from how a government works, that's a very good idea. Which means that we are now changed into a situation where more or less 2/3 of our funding comes from a direct subsidy from the ministry, and the other 1/3 of our income comes from the sales of information from the business register, if I still may say so, Chris. And the second major change we had was January 1st this year, where all the Dutch Chambers of Commerce, including the Association of Chambers of Commerce, where I used to work, I should say, have merged into one organization, where we now only have one Chamber of Commerce for the whole of the Netherlands, which is also a huge efficiency operation, I would say, from different perspectives. First of all, because also of the decline in the funding, we have decided to close down many offices. We had in our little country 45 offices of Chambers of Commerce. We now have 19 offices, out of which 5 still have a back office and the other are just front offices where people can come. Which also means that we went down from around 2,300 staff to 1,500 staff. So we lost 1/3 of our entire staff by the 1st of January of this year. And this also means that we have developed more of a policy which is called, very modern of course, click, call, face, where we like to do as much business as we can through our website. Secondly, by calling, and thirdly only, and trying to diminish that, to have people really at our office. But for today, one of the things which is also important, that the tasks we had are still the same we had before, not all of them, but because of course if you lose 1/3 of your staff, you are losing some of your work as well, hopefully. But the business register is still one of the main tasks we do, and that's also in fact the major reason many people use the Chamber of Commerce. A few quick words. I mean, we do have the same idea everywhere, I would say, on the legal basis of the business register. There is of course, the EU regulations. There are some specific acts in the Netherlands arranging the business register. What also is important to say is that in the Netherlands, registration is in fact mandatory for all legal entities. It is not just companies like in the first company law directive, but it's really all legal entities. And with the last change of the Business Register Act 5-6 years ago, the amount of registered organizations has been broadened to now, you could say, really register everything, because it also now includes professionals, it includes the government itself, and of course all the other things we already had earlier. So that's why we now always say that in fact all economic entities are registered in the Netherlands at the business register. All the usual data you will find in our register, also a bit broader than what's mentioned in the first company law directive, but all these relevant data are there. And of course one of the main things I would say is the information on people with a power of attorney to bind the company in legal transactions. Also to give you an idea about the numbers, only 1/3 of our register consists of companies. 2/3 of our register are other organizations than companies. And also you can see that the amount of specifically created European legal forms are tiny in at least our register, but I think that's normal across the board. A few things on our quality checks which we do when registering organizations. We have nowadays, in fact, you could say 2 main ways of registering new registrations. First of all, companies are being registered online by notaries. The situation in the Netherlands is that if you want to establish a company, you have to go to a notary, like the colleague from Germany just explained more or less. You go to a notary, you establish your company there, and after the establishment of your company, the incorporation, it also has to register at the business register. The registration is not the incorporation itself, but the registration happens after the incorporation. So it is possible that you establish your company and you don't register. That's an offense, and there are some punishments for that, but your company will still exist and has legal personality in that sense. We have created an online system which the notaries can use to do all the registrations for new companies. And we have made that possible, and it has been made possible for us, I would say, because of the fact that the notaries in the Netherlands have a good ID structure and a good identification possibilities, and also a very reliable structure of tokens and everything, which we can trust the information which comes from the notary online. One of our main problems still in the Netherlands is that there is no proper digital ID for natural persons. I mean, we do have a passport, of course, and it has some chips in it or whatever, but there is not really a digital document which we can trust if people do business from home. So there is not the possibility for a real online registration for everybody, because one of the main things we check at a new registration is the identity of persons, which means that people still have to come to our office, in fact, only to show their ID. Because we have also created on our website the possibility of a kind of pre-registration where you fill out all your data, you can upload documents, etc., which are relevant for your registration. And the only thing you still have to do then is come to our office with your passport or driver license or whatever and show that and prove your identity to us so that we can finalize the registration, which means that that can be done in like 5 minutes, but you still have to come. So we are very much pushing the government to create finally some kind of proper digital ID in the Netherlands. One of the picture you see here is of the machines we use to check passports, because first of all we check the identity of a person with his passport, and then we also check the passport itself, whether or not it's false, it's stolen, whatever. It has a connection to a database of passports which are stolen, and it checks, in fact, passports from all over the world. It is the same system which is used on our airports to check the identity of people. Then, when we register the data of a natural person in our register, we also immediately make a connection with the central database of natural persons in the Netherlands, because everybody has a number, a person number, which means that we can check the data they gave us, and we will always use the data which are already in the system. And also we will create a link from that time on that if there is a change in personal data from a person who's registered in the business register, we will get that automatically. If a person moves in private, because we have private addresses of everybody, we will get the information directly. If somebody marries and chooses to use another name from that time on, we will get that information automatically. If somebody dies, we get that information automatically, which means that there is a very good connection between those two, and which also means that if people move their private address, like I said, the only thing they need to do is to go to the municipality where they live, and they will automatically forward it to us. So that's also a little less burden for people which are registered in the business register. You have to go to your municipality anyway, and they will forward the information to us. Then at the time of registration, we will check lots of things which are possible to check at that time. If we look at the Articles of Association of the incorporation deed or something like that, we will find whether or not the right people are mentioned as a director, what their power of attorney is. We will check also the business address which people give us. If it's a different address than their home address, we will check if they really own such a building or that there is a rental agreement for using that address, so that we also are sure that that's a proper address which is connected to that business. Furthermore, we also check like what we call the substance of a business. Is it really a business? I mean, we have lots of discussions, for instance, on the fact the guy who is every Wednesday afternoon selling some eggs because he has too much eggs from his chickens, which he has as a hobby. Is that a business? No, we don't think that's a business. And we have an agreement with our tax office, for instance, on the thresholds after which we call it a business, and below that we don't call it a business, and you don't have to register. Like I said, incorporation document, we check the partnership contract, if it's a partnership, to see if it's the right people, etc., etc. And one of the main things it's important to realize as well, the obligation to register data initially and all the changes is on the company or business itself. And there is, from a legal point of view, a period of 8 days after which the information has to be registered with us. Which also means, of course, that we know that our register will never be up to date. Because things which happen today might be reported to us in a week's time, which is perfectly in time from a legal point of view, but we know that for a couple of days we will have the wrong information. So that's at the registration side at the beginning when we register organizations and when we have changes, etc. Since Vito asked me to say something about quality aspects, I think I can also share some information with you on some research we did last year. We had done last year by a very well-known external market research organization in the Netherlands to check the data in our register and to have a look at the quality and say something about that as well. They took a sample of 1,100 organizations from the register, which were more or less equally divided over 10 lines of businesses, and also were divided by the amount of employees and geographically over the Netherlands, so that we could get a little bit of a proper view of not just one part of the Netherlands. We checked, in fact, for 5 issues, or they checked for 5 issues. Checked the company name, checked the main activities of a company, the line of business they are working in, checking the physical address, checking the postal address, and checking the phone number of a company. And compare that with the reality by calling people, by looking at all the data, etc., to try to find as much as possible information to really check the information on these 1,100 organizations. And the results of that were the following, which we found at that time between 91 and 98% for the different pieces of information in our register, which on the one hand you could say is nice or maybe low, but at least this is what we found at the time being, to really have a first view after a couple of years again how this type of information was viewed, and I'll get back to why we did it as well. And of course then the question always is, if you find these results, what are you going to do with it? Because it's nice to know, but you also want to take some action about it. In the earlier presentation from Ernst & Young today on different countries, there was also some mentioning already, and some praise, which was very nice, on the system of basic registries which we nowadays have in the Netherlands, which also means that we are busy in this system where the different registries work together and inform each other when they find differences between the information so that you can take action. That's a generic thing which has already been organized, that we are busy doing that, and it's growing into a system which will really comprise all the different registries in the Netherlands. What we're also doing is creating a kind of digital message box, you could say, together with the government, which will make it much more easy to check your own data which are registered in all different registers in the Netherlands, so you can have an easier trigger to view that information and to change it when necessary. And also based on the information we found in this research, we have taken a specific action to check the data from the financial industry, because we found much more missing things there than we thought would be, especially in that line of business. So that was quite a bit surprising for us. So we did a specific project on that to improve the data from that type of industry. And finally, what we also did is we used the branch disclosure service from EBR, which is available for a couple of countries. And what we did was that we checked the data of the organizations in the Netherlands which have a relation to those 4 countries, the UK, Ireland, Norway and Sweden, which are business registers which are participating in the BDS, to check if the connection we have in our register to a number and a name in, for instance, the register of Companies House, if it's still valid, yes or no. And we found from this check that like 6% of all the relations we had in our register were not correct anymore, or the mother company didn't exist anymore in the UK, for instance, which is a thing which quite often happens, and we can all immediately then take action to talk with the branches or the companies in the Netherlands about their registration and see what they can improve. And also this is one of the things which is of course being regulated in the new directive to make this a regular thing in the cooperation between business registers based on the new directive. If you look at the qualities, the conclusions on the quality after this research, the main conclusion which the organization drew was what's in the first sentence there. At the level of individual data, the quality of the business register is high and stable. So that looked very nice. Of course, we were not satisfied enough if you saw the numbers, but I mean, from a perspective from a market research organization, that was nice to hear, of course. And like I said earlier, in this new system of the basic registries in the Netherlands, which are working together more and more, and also having which is born from the idea of asking information once from companies and natural persons as well, by the way, and sharing it between government agencies, which makes life much easier for companies. So this sharing of information will be mandatory when all the registries are connected. Which means that people and business only have to file information once, which for instance means that if the tax agency comes to you asking data which are already in the business register, you can say, this is my business register number, go find it there. Which in the end makes the government more efficient, which gives less burden on companies, and which also makes it possible to improve services. But we always should remember for the Dutch situation that there is this period of a week which have the organizations to register data, so we will always know that there is a gap between the actual situation and what is registered, because that's a legal thing which is possible. Thank you very much.